Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 4. Our last lecture, we learned about sports fans and participants and also about their consumer behaviors. In the upcoming lectures, we're going to talk about marketing analysis in the sports industries. First of all, let's look at the agenda for this lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about how we're able to conduct a marketing analysis in the sports industries. The first thing we're going to talk about is we need to go and find data, right? We know we're living in a big data area, so we have to figure out how we're able to get this data and how we're able to classify this data in different categories. So in marketing research, we classify all the data into two types. Quantitative data and qualitative data. So I'm going to introduce different types of data. And the last part of today's class is we're going to introduce the whole marketing analysis process. To start with, to identify the problems of what are we trying to figure out through this marketing analysis first. And then we're going to look at different types of research design to find the most proper design. And the third one is we're going to collect data. And then after collecting this data, we can analyze this data, and then we're going to present this data to the decision makers to help them to make a better decisions in terms of how we are able to, promote the product that we create, or the service we provide, and how we are going to examine it, whether sponsors are really pleased with the investment they put into the sports events. So this is the agenda for these lectures. First of all, let's talk about sports marketing research. So what is a sports marketing research? So sports marketing research, based on the definition, is a systematically collecting, analyzing, reporting information to enhance decision making through the strategic sports marketing process. So basically, from the definition, we know what we're trying to do in the sports marketing analysis is we are trying to go and collect information, right? And then analysis the information, and then the report the findings to the general public. So we're going to talk about how we are able to collect this information, collect these data. So before we introduce the data collection process, so we can introduce one person that have a huge impact in the sports marketing. His name is Matt Levine. So who is Matt Levine? So Matt Levine could be considered as a pioneer in sports marketing. When we introduce about sports marketing, the first lectures we talk about the concept of sports marketing was introduced in 1976 in the Advertising Age magazine. So for the first time, we have the term sports marketing, right? Sports marketing different from traditional marketing. Speaking of the pioneer, we say Matt Levine. So Matt Levine has been adopting a lot of different idea and research since 1970s. So he used to work for the NHL St. John's Sharks. So he tried a lot of different things. The first things he tried is he developed something called audience audits to try to capture the demographic and psychographic information about the fans who are attending these sports events. Think about it happening in 1970s when computers was not existing at that time. So it was really difficult for a marketer to gather this information to understand how the fans experiences when they are attending the events. So Matt Levine, they come up with the idea saying like, we're going to conduct some interview. We try to understand how their experiences and satisfactions when they're watching the games. So one of the approach he used is called pass-by interview. So he went to the stadium by himself and then distribute a survey he created to all the fans before the games. And then they're going to collect these surveys at the end of the games. And then they can analyze this information and present this information to the decision makers. So he tried to use this approach to see about fans' experiences. So that was kind of like a earliest experiments and how marketers try to understand about fans' experiences. So that's the one thing. And the second thing he's trying to do here is he also tried to look at whether visual image can really impact consumers' behaviors. So in 1992, so he held NHL St. John's Sharks to change the logos. So the logo initially was a black color, and he wanted to know if they change something more appealing, whether they will help with the merchandise product sales. So he changed the black color to the green colors. So after changing the logo's color, the retail sales of the St. John's Sharks was increased by $125 million in that particular year. So it was really, really successful. So he tried a lot of different things in the past, and the things he did in the past is have a huge impact and influence to today. So a lot of things he used in the past that we are still using it today. So this is Mark Levin's. Mark Levin started the idea of we try to understand about sports consumers, try to understand about sports fans. So the thing to help him to make the decision is they're using data, right? So this data is also we call informations. We have a lot of different data nowadays, right? So among all those data, we can classify all these data into two types. One is called syndicate data, another one is called custom data. So syndicate data are those data have already been collected, been organized, and repackaged for the consumption. So basically what we need to do is just go and find this data and help you to analyze this data and try to understand the meaning of these data. There are a lot of examples. So one of the examples is the US Census. So this would provide you a lot of demographic information of different category and different target market. For instance, if you're going to introduce a new products, they try to target greater Cincinnati areas. So you try to understand how many people are living in these areas, what would be their income level, their education levels, and also the gender also play a very important role as well, and also different age groups. So after updating this information, and you can develop more effective marketing strategies to try to target particular group that you want to target. So those information are available online. So these are demographic profiling available online. So you can just go and find out this information. Another example is about audience measurements. Some students might have heard Nielsen, which is the data, the broadcasting data company. So Nielsen every day they're getting these data through these households who are watching the sports programs, not just sports programs, but also other programs on TVs. So they will report the TV ratings every single days, right? So they normally use a device called people meters. Those people meters normally has been attached to the TV sets. So they're able to indicate which households actually watch what kind of like TV program, and then they collect this information and then share it to the general public, let people to know, hey, what TV shows the most popular in the United States, right? So that's why we are able to get the Super Bowl viewings when the game is over. So we know how many households are watching Super Bowl during the game day. So those data are also available, right? So they produce, they update this information, share this information with the general public, then we are able to update it directly without collecting it by ourselves. So these are syndicate data. Compared to syndicate data, custom data are something that we have to go and collect and by ourselves. So this is also has been considered as a primary data. Syndicate data we consider as a second-hand data because we're not collecting by ourselves, right? But custom data is we are going to collect it by ourselves. So we're collecting either using interview, survey, focus groups, Then we're going to collect these data. Among all the data we collect by ourselves, we can also be classified into two groups. One is a quantitative data, one is a qualitative data. Quantitative data, obviously, to let you know the numbers, right? So they let you know like how many % of the customers purchase this product are satisfied with the experiences. Like qualitative data, obviously, is more about words, right? They help you understand not just how many people purchase these products, but also provide you more information about whether they're happy with the product their purchase, and what part they like the most and what part they dislike the most, right? So to give you more in-depth information, having these qualitative data. So both data are very, very important, provide us a very, very useful information that can help us to understand our customer, and then we can make some adjustment to the marketing strategies. Okay, speaking of these quantitative data, among all this number we collect, this data, we can also classify them into 4 different types. The first one is called nominal data, right? Nominal data is basically we're based on the data's characteristic, we classify them into different groups, right? We classify them into different groups, put them into different groups. So I'll give you a couple examples. Very common, right? So when we distribute a survey, we ask people's genders. Are you male? Are you female? So we classify them into 2 different groups. Male is one group, females in other groups. Another example was your hair colors, right? We classify them into different groups. Yeah, so those are nominal data. So we base on their same characteristic and classify them into different groups. The second data is called ordinal data. So ordinal data, normally they have a neutral orderings, right? So such as age groups, right? People's 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, right? So if you classify them into different age groups, right? So those are ordinal data, they have different orders, right? Another example, when we try to ask people's experiences, we always distribute surveys, ask them, how do you feel today? Very unhappy, unhappy, okay, happy, very happy, right? So when we look at those options we provided to the people who participate in the survey, we order them, we give them an order, right? Another example is like, how satisfied are you with our service? Very unsatisfied, somewhat unsatisfied, neutral, somewhat satisfied, and very satisfied. So this also has orders, right? Nominal data, they don't have the orders. Male and female, we just classify you guys into 2 different groups. I'm not saying like male better than female, female better than male. Doesn't have orders. Well, your hair color is the same, doesn't really have the orders, right? Just put you guys into different groups, right? So this is about nominal data and ordinal data, right? So you know the differences between ordinal and nominal. In nominal does not have the orders. The ordinal does have the order among all these options we provided to the customers. The third type of data is called interval data. So interval data is a numeric data in which we know not only the orders, but also we know the exact differences between each value is the same, but they don't have a true zero. So the example for the interval data is a temperature, right? Temperature. So temperature, so we know 20, 30s, 40s, right? So we know the differences between 20 to 30 and the differences between 40 to 50. So those the differences between those values are the same, completely identical, right? So they're interval data. It has order, right? It also, the differences between all the different values are completely identical, right? Unlike we talk about nominal data, so the differences between those are not identical. For instance, the difference between happy and very happy, and the difference between very happy, very unhappy and unhappy are not the same, right? So they're not the same, right? Because they're very subjective, they're not going to be the same. So you cannot really match it the same, right? But interval data, like the examples like temperature, like the time, they're the same, right? You say, hey, please wait for 10 minutes, right? So if you wait from 2 to 2:10 or 3 to 3:10, so these 10 minutes are completely identical. So those are interval data, right? So, and the last one is called ratio data. Ratio data is talking about the interval data with absolutely zero. So have a neutral 0 point. So 0 means nothing, right? We'll give you example. You ask people's income. Hey, so what is your income? Right? People say, I don't have an income. That means 0 means nothing. 0 means 0, right? 0 means nothing, right? So ask people about your weight. Your height is the same. Hey, what's the weight? 0. 0 means no weight, right? Height, if 0, it means no height, right? Unlike temperature, right? Temperature, we say, hey, we do have a 0 temperature, but 0 temperature does not mean nothing. 0 temperature means something, right? They have particular meanings there, right? The ratio data they talk about 0 is 0 means nothing, 0 means true 0, right? So those are the differences between 4 types of data. Okay, so we have a nominal data. So nominal data is the attributes are only named it. So they're weakness the data. So we only classify people into different groups, but those different groups did not have the orders, right? And then we have ordinal data. Ordinal data is that the attributes can be ordered. It has an order. So 2 is bigger than 1. All right, it has an order. Interval data, that means their distance is meaningful. The distance between different values is completely identical, right? The distance between different values in the ordinal data is not identical, right? The ratio data is they have absolutely 0. So the 0 means nothing, right? The 0 in the interval data has meanings, right? Has the meaning. It's not means nothings, right? So those are the difference between these 4 types of the data. Okay, so these are quantitative data. And also we have a qualitative data. So this qualitative data, so we normally conduct interview, right? Ask people about their experience, their thoughts, right? So those are qualitative data. So qualitative data, including the text messages, right? So some people might say, I'm going to analysis social media, analysis tweets. So it has some meanings, right? They help marketer to understand more, provide more in-depth information instead of just telling you how many percent of people doing these things. They will provide more information to let you know why they're doing this, right? So to give you more in-depth information. That's a qualitative data. So there's differences between quantitative data and qualitative data. Both of them are very useful. Okay. The next part, we are going to introduce a marketing research process. So to conduct a marketing research, so we have to do the 7 steps, right? So identify the problem, choosing a research type, identify the data collection methods, deciding the data collection forms, deciding the samples, and collecting analysis, and interpreting the data and present these research projects, right? So that looks pretty complicated, but we're only going to emphasize like 4 very important steps. First thing, we're going to show you how we're able to identify the problem. And then we're going to talk about 4 different types of research design. And then we talk about how we are able to collect data, right? How we're able to conduct interview, how we are able to conduct surveys. And then we talk a little bit about the data analysis, right? So we're going to focus on these 4 areas. Okay, the first thing we have to do is we need to go identify a problem. To conduct a marketing research, the first thing that we have to know is the purpose of the studies. Why are we doing these studies? Why do we need to do these researches? So what are we trying to understand from this research? So this will determine what information we need to obey, what approach that we need to use to obey particular data. Right, so there are many different ways that we can really use, right? So to identify this research objective, we need to make sure that we can shade this research objective, make sure it's very specific. So I'll give an example. If someone say we would like to conduct a sponsorship analysis for NASCAR. So sponsorship studies, sponsorship analysis, that's a big thing, right? So how should we really identify the problem is we need to go and provide more in-depth information, right? So how can we conduct a sponsorship analysis for NASCARs? So we can study about their friend attitudes towards the NASCAR sponsors, right? And we can also analyze the effectiveness of different types of NASCAR sponsorships. We can also try to compare a competitive basis for sponsorship performance among the official NASCAR sponsors in the selected product categories. So, for instance, if we want to know about fans' attitude towards the NASCAR sponsors, so we can just go and interview fans about their perceptions towards these sponsors, right? And we can also conduct a survey asking about their perceptions too, right? So to analyze the effectiveness of different types of sponsorships, right, we can distribute a survey and ask them about their experiences with these particular sponsorships, whether their sponsorships are very beneficial for develop the brand of the NASCARs, right? So those are a lot of different research questions that you have to think about. So when we have to go and conduct marketing analysis, so we need to go and understand exactly what we need to know first, okay? And that's the first step, to go and identify the problem. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to understand about research design. There are multiple different ways that we can design this research. So research design including 4 types. The first one is called descriptive. Descriptive design is basically the data we'll be updating is about the characteristic of the target groups by answering the questions such as who, what, where, when, and how often, right? The first example is like, for instance, we can work with Chicago Cubs to explore the characteristic of their season ticket holders, right? So descriptive information, we can ask them the information about their age, gender, income level, how many years for them to have the season ticket for Chicago Cubs, right? How many years have them been supporting the teams, how much money they have spent on the season tickets, right? So give you very descriptive information and let you know a little bit about their characteristics, right? So that's one of the examples. The second example we're going to look at is about what brands do friend think should be the MLB sponsors, right? MLB has a lot of different sponsors. Like for the sports fans, they might not really care much about those commercials has been broadcast during the games, right? So a lot of sponsors, they invest the money, they want to know how many people actually associate their brand with the product that invest the money in, right? So we can conduct this the survey like this. So for instance, we can list all these MLB, their co-sponsors and their main competitor in the markets, and then we're going to distribute to around these all MFL fans to see how many of them are able to identify what kind of organizations are the official sponsor of the MLB, right? So this is to give people the idea whether our sponsorships are very effective since we put a lot of monies here. Okay, these are second examples for the descriptive designs. The second research design is called correlations. Correlations is we would like to know whether there are 2 categories they are related with each other or not, right? We have 2 different variables. We want to know whether they're related and not related. So one example is we can examine about relationships between age of the fans and likelihood for the future attendance. How likely for people to participate and attend the games in the futures if you look at their age? Is that like the older friends are more likely to attend the games or younger friends are less likely to attend the games? So we like to see these associations, right? So this is one of the example. The second example is we can examine the relationships between the game attendance and merchandise sales. So we want to know, is the person who attend more games, they are more likely to buy merchandise, or the people who attend the less games are more likely to buy the merchandise, right? So it's possible for people who attend the last game will be more likely to buy merchandise because they know I'm only going to be here once. I want to keep its memory, so I would like to spend some money to buy some merchandise, right? It's also possible for people who attend more games that would like to buy the merchandise because they have association with the game team already, so they want to buy more product to show this attachment association they have with this organization, right? So these are correlation. There are two different variables. We look at the relationship between these two variables, whether they're related or not related. So for correlation, they're from -1 to 1, right? If they're highly correlated, they're positive relationships. So which means the more games they attend, the more merchandise product they will be purchasing. So that will be a positive relationship. The negative relationship will be the more games they attend, the less product they purchase. There will be a negative relationship, right? So those are positive relationship and negative relationship. Some of you who are already taken statistics, you already know about what is correlations, right? That's the second design. Third design is called causal design. Causal design is to examine whether changing of the level of the one variable cause the levels of another variable to change, right? Causal design is also cause and effect relationship. So basically we have two or more than two variables. We would like to know whether variable A cause variable B, right? So since we have more than two variables, right? We have more than two variables, so we have two types of the variable. One variable is called dependent variable. Dependent variable is also called outcome variable. It's the variable to be explained, to be predicted, and to be measured. And also we have independent variable. Independent variable is the variable that can be manipulated and changed in some way to impact the dependent variable or outcome variables. Right, we talk about dependent variable is outcome variable, something we want to examine it, right? Independent variable is something we want to see whether independent variable change, the dependent variables will be changes, right? We'll give you an example. We want to know what factor will impact game attendance. So those are the data we update. But this is attendance data, this is a quality of the game, this is the rival, this is the weather, this is advertising, this is weather, and this is game days. So we want to see these four information we obey. How would this predict the game attendance, right? So how would that impact the game attendance? So game attendance in this case is dependent variables, outcome variable. That's something we try to examine it, right? And the quality of the game, advertising, weather, and game day, that those are independent variable. The independent variable try to predict how would that impact the game attendance, right? How that impact the game attendance. So let's look at the correlation. We talked about correlations previously, right? We find out the quality of games has positive impact to the game attendance, which means the better rival, the better quality of the game, the attendance is higher, right? But the advertising actually have a negative relationship, which means the more advertising monies you spend, the less people will come. It's interesting, right? So the weather also have positive relationship to that as well, which means the good weather, fans will be more likely to come, right? And the raining day, a cold day, friends will be less likely to go. Makes sense, right? So this is causal relationship. We know this outcome variable. We know others are independent variables, right? So there are a lot of studies about fans' experiences, what factor will be impact the game attendance, right? So one of the studies I'm going to show you is the MLB studies. This study has been conducted like 10 years ago. This studies what factor that would impact the game attendance, the MLB. Right. First of all, they find out the time factors will have impact MLB's game attendance. Right. If the game has been scheduled over the weekend and night, that will be more likely to be attended by MLB fans. Right. If the game has been scheduled during the weekdays, no, the attendance is lower. Makes sense, right? And also city characteristic will impact game attendance. Right. The game played in the big city, income level are high, unemployment are low, so the attendance will be higher. Right. And the team's performance obviously have a significant impact to the game attendance. If the team keep winning or has great chance to win or have great chance to qualify for the playoff, their attendance will be higher. And fans' interests also will impact too, right? Those including temperature. If a great temperature, great weather, people would like to come, right? And also they talk about the age of the families, right? Will also have some sort of impact the game attendance. So from this example, MLB attendance is outcome variable, also dependent variable. All those things we talk about are independent variable, right? So this is the outcome, this is the reason, this cause this outcome. So those are the relationship. I hope this example can help you to understand the relationship between dependent and independent variable. And the last design we're going to talk about today is called exploratory. So exploratory design is pretty useful when the research problem is not quite well defined, right? For instance, we find out ticket sales for Ohio State football games decline, but we don't know why, right? So we're using exploratory analysis. We're going to conduct an interview and ask people why they decided not to come to the games, or they decided not to renew the season tickets, right? So this exploratory design. So when we don't know what has happened behind, so we would like to know more, we're using exploratory design. Right. The previous design we talk about correlations, causal design, is a lot of time we know those factors might have impact the outcome. So we are going to see the relationship, which factor have a bigger impact than the others. Exploratory is like we have no clue, so we want to know more. And this is the research design. The next one is we're going to talk about is the data collections. How are we going to collect data? After identify a particular research design, we need to go and collect data. So we can collect quantitative data, qualitative data we talked about previously, right? So quantitative data, we can use survey, online survey, phone survey, direct mail survey. Qualitative data, we can use in-depth interviews, and also focus groups. So I'm mainly going to talk about how we are able to create survey, how we are able to conduct the interviews and focus groups. Okay, we talk about qualitative data first. So for the qualitative data, we normally would use in-depth interview and focus groups. So what the difference between in-depth interview and focus group? So in-depth interview is normally we're gonna pick some people that we're gonna interview. So a lot of time it's a one-on-one interview, right? Focus group is normally you are talking with like 3 to 12 people's focus group, right? So in that interview, we have 3 types of the interview. We have a unstructured interview. Unstructured interview is like we're not gonna create a question first. We just go and talk to the people and then and get this information, right? And also we have a semi-structured interview. Semi-structured interview is like we create 5 to 6 questions and then we ask people, and if the people could not give me the answer that I want, I can ask them follow-up question. This is called semi-structured interview. We also have a structured interview. Structured interview is like I'm gonna create 10 questions and I'm gonna ask the people these 10 questions, no matter what answer they provided to me. Maybe they give me only yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I cannot get more information, but I'm not going to ask any follow-up question. This is called structured interview. Semi-structured interview is more popular because on one hand, they give you direction, let you know what kind of question you need to ask, make your interview become more efficient. On the other hand, they can also help you to get information you need, right? So the advantage of having an in-depth interview is they can help you to get more data and also cost effective. Could be very good for exploratory research, as we mentioned previously, because we don't know the reason, so we try to figure out why, so that we are going to conduct interviews, right? One thing we will have to know is about location of the interview could impact the data you've been receiving, right? So if the interview has been conducted in a very quiet place, the interviewee are super relaxed and they would like to share more information with you. But if the interview has been conducted in a very stressful environment, for instance, people is working, right? So you ask them some question, they say it's going to take very quick. Can you just help me, answer this question? You possibly won't get this information you want, right? You won't get as much information you want. So this is the location of the interview could impact the data that you will be receiving from this research. So this is about in-depth an interview. The second one is about focus group, right? We'll talk about focus group is normally typically between 5 to 12 participants. Groups should have high levels of hegemony, which means when you pick the people who participate in the focus group interview, you need to make sure they are well represented for different groups. For instance, if we try to understand about Miami students about their experiences coming back to campus after COVID-19, right? So you need to make sure the 5 to 12 participants, they are well represented, right? So you need to have students represent female, students represent males, right? You have students represent minority, you have students, you have grad students, you have undergrad students, right? You also have international students because they represent very different perspective, right? So you need to make sure they give you a different perspective, right? You also need to make sure the students can represent more like social science, and some people may represent like engineering and some other for business majors, right? Make sure they're well represented when you pick these participants. So a focus group also can give you pretty good in-depth information as well. So the procedure of the focus group, normally you as a researchers, you're gonna lead the entire discussion and try to make sure everyone have the contribution. So for instance, you have the focus group interview, like 12 people participate to your focus group interview. You need to make sure everyone share their opinions. So a lot of times, without a clear directions, maybe, one people talk a lot, now the 3 or 4 participants didn't say anything at all. It's possible. So for you, you will have to try to go and keep the balance, make sure everyone contribute similars. So focus group can be used for the observation for this nonverbal clues as well. So you can ask people, so what situation we need to use a focus group to do the interview. There are some examples I'll give it to you. So you want to know about pro and cons of hosting the particular sports event, so you can get people together, represent different groups, right? Ask them to share about their experiences of hosting these events, how would that impact their regular life. This is about focus group. So the last topic we're going to talk in today's class is about how are we going to develop a survey. Survey is a very, very useful approach in the marketing research. They help us to understand about our customers' needs and demands. When we try to understand about customer, their brand awareness, their attitudes, their behaviors, try to obey their demographic information, their lifestyle, purchasing behaviors, and other variables of interest using survey is very convenient, easy, how you get a lot of data, represent a lot of different groups, right? So survey will give you example, like when we try to understand fans' perception towards service quality, right? So that is very useful if you're using survey. We can list all the service we provide and ask them to rate this service, which one they satisfied with, which one they are not satisfied with. But if we try to understand customers' attitude towards the issues of the stadium's naming right in college sport, we can also use the survey to ask, college fans, the people who attend the games, the people who watch the games on TVs about their perception and attitude towards the naming rights issues, right? A lot of type survey, we can distribute it on multiple different platforms. Online survey, we're living 21st century. With the advancements of technology, we are able to distribute surveys online, right? There are some benefits with using online surveys. Benefits is obviously we can reach out to a lot of different people. And also there are a lot of available survey design software that we can use, like SurveyMonkey. Some students might have heard SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey, the good thing is if you're going to create a small survey, SurveyMonkey is a good, less than 10 question, I think 9 question, 10 question. You can use SurveyMonkey. But if you want to create a very complicated survey with more than 10 questions, you have to pay. It's not completely free. And Google actually have a survey called Google Form, Google Doc, very easy for you to use. Compared to SurveyMonkey, obviously Google survey is not looking very appealing. Look very simple. It's not very fancy, but it's a free, completely free. Another one is a Quadtree. A lot of universities are actually using Quadtree. As a Miami students, you are also able to create a Quadtree account. You can create surveys there. They help you to collect these data when you include all the surveys and on your Quadtrees. That is the benefits, right? We can get this information really quick. We distribute this information on social media, for instance. Maybe 200 people answer your questions, and you can just analysis immediately. And the online survey also have some problems too, right? So a lot of time the online surveys are distributed through email, right? So maybe we only have a very limited email address. Maybe people annoy this email that you send out to, so that could impact about your response rate. Sometimes the survey emails go to the junk box, so that will also impact your response rate. A lot of time, if you create an online survey, send this survey to the participant, we normally encourage you to send out the follow-up email to remind people, and also give people a timeline. So for instance, you say, hey, the survey, the collection time is like the end of this week or in 2 weeks. Please take your time to complete the survey before the deadline, right? And then the next week you can send people a reminder to say, hey, we sent your survey last week. If you haven't completed surveys, please take your time to complete this survey. If you already completed survey, please annoy this email. Thank you so much for your contribution, or something like that, right? This online survey also how you be able to get more response. And you can give them, say, hey, we got like $25 Amazon gift card. When you're done with collecting survey, make sure you leave your email address. We're gonna pick a people and give them the gift card for participating in this survey. So that multiple different way how we are able to encourage people to participate this survey. The next thing we're going to talk about how we are going to create a survey. The very common questions on surveys include open-end question, multiple choice, random order. For open-end questions, it's easy. How is your experiences attending our events? Open-end questions, right? Give people the time and spaces to write and share their experiences. Multiple choice questions always prefer because online survey, a lot of people may be using smartphone. They don't really want to use smartphone to answer a very long survey. So, multiple choice made them very easy. Just, click options and let you know about their thought and experiences. And also some of the question are run order questions. So I'm going to show you some of the example. Multiple choice question. So this one is very common question. This is called Likert skill questions. So you want to ask people about their experiences, their perceptions. You can create a lot of statements and ask them about whether they are satisfied with the service you provide, and you help them to they help you to understand about their perceptions. So this one is Delta Ally, right? Try to understand people's perception about Delta Ally. You list all these questions. You say this is a 5-point Likert scale, right? From strongly disagree to strongly agree, and people can just click 1 to 5 to let you know about their experiences. So this multiple choice question, really quick, help you get a lot of data, and also help you to understand the customer better. So that's kind of easy one for you to do. The second one is called run order question. Run order question, this is an example. You list a lot of different options and ask people to run from the most important and the least important. They say, the example here says, which media source do you feel the most important in replying information about your federations to the target publics? Please run the following source of the media information. 1 means most important, 7 means less important, right? You include them, they can run the orders, right? So when you're creating a survey, the very important thing is this question you create need to be very clear. So the survey, the first thing you need to make sure is the question is not going to be too long. Make sure the question is 1 sentence, 1.5 sentence at most. Make sure it's clear, easy for people to understand, and easy for people to read and complete. And try not to be a bingos, right? Make sure it's very clear, straightforward. Try not to include 2 questions in one. This is called double barrel questions. Be more specific, right? And also try not to use a lot of technical terms. Make sure you use plain language and help people to understand. Let's look at some questions here. Right, so what the problem of those in a survey question? First one, what is your age? 10, 0 to 10, 10, 20, 20, 30, and 30s. And the second question, how often do you use the exercise rooms in your residence hall? And the third one is, on a scale 1 to 10, how would you rate the service of our gold medal award-winning Park and Rec departments? Okay, the problem for the first one is you find out they're overlapping, right? If you're 10 years old, should you pick this one or should you pick this one? They're overlapping, right? Second one, how often do you use this exercise room, right? You say never, rarely, frequently. Very subjective, right? Very subjective, right? Try to make clear choices for people. Maybe you say we use less than 3 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week, more than 5 times a week. To give people an option to choose more clear. The third one is from scale 1 to 10 to rate the service, right? The problem is 1 means what? 10 means what? So 1 means satisfied or 10 means satisfied. People may have different understandings about these questions. So you need to include that, right? So this is some of the survey questions here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about sampling. We know we would like to distribute our survey to the people, right? So sample is a very important. The idea thing is we want to interview, we want to reach out to everyone and everyone complete these surveys, right? This idea. So if everyone complete these surveys, this is called populations, right? So that's good. But in the real world, it's unlikely that we are able to obey the response from everyone that we want to survey. For instance, even we say we want to survey all the Miami students about your experience coming back to campus after COVID-19. We have like nearly 19,000 students. We send email to 19,000 students. It is hard for everyone to respond to that survey, right? So a lot of time we're using samples. So when we're using sample, there are two different types of sampling method. One is called non-probability sampling. Second one is probability sampling. So non-probability samplings is those samples are chosen subjective by researchers. So for instance, you chose just because it's very convenient to me. So for instance, I want to ask my students their experience of attending this course. I could just distribute a sample surveys to the people who showed up today, right? So this is called convenient samplings. So non-probability sampling is talking about not everyone have the equal chance to be selected to participate in this survey. Probability sampling is talking about everyone has an equal chance to be chosen to participate in these surveys, right? So those are the difference between non-probability sampling and probability samplings. And the last topic we're going to talk about is called data analysis. We create a survey, we conduct interview, we conduct focus group interview. The next thing we're going to do is we need to go and analyze this data. When we analyze this data, some students have taken statistics courses. So you know you have to go analyze this data. We're going to look at their central tendency, mean, median, modes. Right? We're going to look at range variation, standard deviation, look at frequency distribution, look at their correlations. Right? So those are we're using this statistic tool can help you. SBS is obviously a very common tool. I know some of you are taking statistic course before. They recommend you guys using R tool, which is also a very powerful tool right now. It's also free, so it's kind of good for you to use those tool, help you analyze data, and then help you present this information to the people, to decision maker. Okay, this is today's class. Today's class we talk about sports marketing researches, right? So the marketing research including 7 steps, right? But we mainly focus on 4 steps today. First of all, is we need to go and identify the problems, make sure the problem we identify is specific, clear. Second thing is we're going to pick the research design, right? 4 different research design we talk about: descriptive, correlations, causal design, exploratory. And then we're going to collect data, right? We can do the interview, we can do focus group interview, we can do surveys, right? We talk about how we are able to develop a good survey, and also talk about how we are able to use different types of sampling methods. And then we can analyze this data, and then we can present this report to the decision maker. Okay, so this is about sports marketing researches. I hope you enjoy this course. Please let me know if you have any questions. All right, we're going to talk about other sports marketing issue in the next lectures. Okay, talk to you next time.